This is a Rogue Media Network podcast.
Your Playbook with Jay Mathis features real conversations about the ever-changing playbook of high achievers in any industry or role. Join me and my guests for unscripted, real-world conversations about what's worked, what hasn't, what they've had to unlearn, and how they adapt when conditions shift. These are candid discussions about pressure, resilience, and the discipline required to stay sharp when the game changes. Honest dialogue, real experience, practical insight you can apply immediately. Well, welcome to your podcast. My name is Jay Mathis, and I'm really excited about my guest today, Mark Israelson. I've known now for, 5-10 years. It feels like maybe a tad longer, as I've been doing a lot of work for the City of Plano for about 15 years. And Mark has been there for that whole period of time and longer. So, Mark, welcome to the show. Glad you're here.
Thanks, Jay. Appreciate you having me on.
Well, yeah. So for everyone listening, Mark is the city manager of the City of Plano, Texas, and a great, growing, exciting city. And he's been there a long time. In fact, Mark, I was looking at your resume, and you can tell us a little more about it. And I almost thought about titling this "From Budget Analyst to City Manager," the journey of leadership, because you've kind of run the gamut from a lot of different areas, government and policy, utilities. I mean, you've kind of been in a lot of different things. So give us kind of the Mark story a little bit throughout your career.
Yeah, I might put some parentheses behind that title and say, hitting potholes, bar ditches, but remaining on the road nonetheless was kind of that aspect.
Title of your next book.
Yes. Well, so kind of going back, I did start with the city in 99. So I got my master's in public administration from the University of North Texas, and I'm a proud alumni of that program and think the world of it. And then spent a few years in the private sector doing utility and regulatory consulting. So did some of the financial modeling behind things like water and sewer rates, and worked a little bit on the electric transition in Texas to deregulated markets. So did some of that stuff. And then in 99 was looking to make a change, and Plano had a position for a budget analyst, and they needed somebody who could do utility rate modeling. And I said, well, I can do that. So applied. But it was also a homecoming. I grew up in Plano. So many of my childhood years here, going to Christie, Carpenter, and then Clark before moving away to finish high school. So I spent quite a few years growing up in Plano. So applying here was kind of a homecoming for me.
That's cool. I didn't realize that. That you were raised there. Yeah.
And I still have some folks that remember me from back in those days. And just earlier this spring, last year, actually, one of the schools I went to, Carpenter, was actually decommissioned by Plano ISD, and I was actually asked to be one of the speakers at one of their ceremonies where they were kind of saying goodbye to the school. And it just brought back a flood of memories of my tragic youth. And so it was, I think of awful fashion and other things, but it was great to be a part of that. This was a great place to grow up and just have, nothing but love and fond memories of that. But in 99 came here as a budget analyst, and Karen Rhodes Whitley hired me, and she's still here to this day. And so she gave me that first shot, and I really owe a lot to her because she has an amazing management style. She really let me grow and explore and learn a lot about the organization and really take on some interesting assignments. And that led me to getting to meet and spend some time with our city manager at the time, Tom Muhlenbeck. And Tom is an icon in Texas city management. He's just if you're drawing your Mount Rushmore of city managers in Texas, Tom is always on it. He took an interest in me and really invested time in me and mentoring me and allowing me to ask a million probably annoying questions, about my career and his past and his experience and everything else. And that led me to becoming the assistant to the city manager, which is kind of like a special projects person in the city manager's office. And then that led me to Hurricane Katrina. when Hurricane Katrina happened, I was in the city manager's office, and we had an emergency sheltering plan. We did not have a housing plan for people that were relocating to Plano because of the hurricane. And so our deputy city manager at the time, Bruce Glasscock, and city manager Tom Muhlenbeck, really assigned me to kind of head up a housing committee within the city. And we went through and started doing housing for evacuees, knowing that they had no place to go back to. And that gave them a chance to see some of my leadership skills and some of my ability to kind of run an operation. And then that led me to
that was unfortunate for those who experienced a crisis, but sort of a fortunate, opportunity, right, for you to, as you said, display your leadership. Which is interesting. But let me just interject and ask this question. Sure. Did that start some of the catalysts for some of the growth that we've seen in Plano over the last 20 years? I mean, did Katrina even kind of create a surge there in y'all's area?
I don't know that it was a true surge. It was a momentary surge for sure. Because when the buses showed up with families, they really didn't have anywhere to go. And so we kind of figured out that we were going to take on leases and work with our faith-based community to actually clothe and provide amenities for apartments, but we were going to handle the leases and utilities. And we worked in collaboration with the community to really be able to take care of folks that were in need of help.
Yeah.
And so it's actually one of the things I have in my office is actually a plaque from one of our churches that was in gratitude, and it was signed by a number of folks that moved here because of Katrina. And it's a reminder of the human aspect of behind what we really do. So it was stressful. It was a lot of work, but a great opportunity. And after that, Tom hired me to be the director of customer and utility services, so handling our utility payments and meter services and that sort of thing, and did that for a number of years. Became an assistant city manager after that, where I was both running that department and supervising a number of other departments. Environmental waste was its own department back then, and IT, and was doing that and growing and learning a lot about my leadership style, about myself, and really how to work in this organization. And then Tom retired, and our deputy city manager, Bruce Glasscock, was hired as the next city manager. And Bruce is a different leader than Tom, but a great leader nonetheless. And I really enjoyed working with him. He really, in many ways, grew me very differently than Tom did, and I am extremely grateful for my time working with Bruce. He's just a former police chief, but just one of the nicest, most collegial guys you can meet. And so he gave me an opportunity about creating a government relations department, but he said, look, this is going to be at a director level. So I went from being an assistant city manager back to being a director.
Oh, okay.
And did that and spent time working in Austin at the legislature and, in DC with Congress, and working with our elected officials and others under Bruce. And after a few years, he promoted me back to being an assistant city manager again and gave me some more departments. So I jokingly say I recycle titles. I've been a director twice. I've been an assistant manager twice.
Well, and didn't you took a little side trip somewhere in there, right? Left.
Yeah, I went to Kilgore. So I actually retained my job here and was loaned out to Kilgore to be their interim city manager for about 3 to 4 months. Okay. So they called me through Ron Hollifield, who runs SGR, which is a very well-known local government search firm and training firm here in Texas. And he said, I've got an opportunity. And I was very apprehensive about it, candidly. And then went home and talked with my wife and said, I don't think this is an opportunity I get to say no to. But I was lucky that Bruce allowed me to keep my job and continue to do my job while I did that job as well. So it was several months of 80 to 90 hour weeks. It was very, very long to do. But I knew it was going to be a specific period of time, and then it would end. And so I felt like it was that opportunity, and went to Kilgore and just loved the community, loved mayor and the council and the staff were just amazing. And I had so much fun having the chance to sit in the chair. And it did nothing but add a ton of fuel to my motivation to try to be a city manager someday.
Well, I'm curious. So I think a lot of people listening would go, okay, my big question is like, when did the lightning strike for you, budget analyst, doing your work there, where you went, I could do this. Like, I think I could be a city manager. Like, when was that?
It was early on. I mean, that's what I went to school for. So I knew
that's true.
it.
Yeah.
But when I kind of set my sights on doing it here in Plano was pretty early into my budget analyst side of things, being exposed to Tom and that way naive, way too confident for what I should have been at the time. Sure. But I was just open that, hey, that's where I want to be. And it's kind of a running joke at City Hall that, I would walk around and say, hey, I want to be in the city manager's office and even be the city manager someday. And
you were open about it. I mean,
I was. And it wasn't always received really well, candidly, because probably of my style and delivery. But I was open about it because I felt like there were so many interesting things and it was such important work. And I just felt like, I want to give back to this community and I want to give back to this organization. And there's no position that has a bigger impact than city manager.
Well, yeah, I think that's an interesting thing about leadership too, because I know you enough to know you're a very humble person. So when you said that, well, it may have come off funny to a couple of people here and there, right? Like, oh, who does he think he is? He wants to, but you were saying, man, I'm trained for it. I'm here and I aspire to do good things for the city. So I'm sure most people heard it is like, because a lot of times we don't know. And you're probably wondering about some of your directors and so forth who are like, who are the ones that are who wants this job? Who's in line to really want it? And sometimes you have to tell people, I really want it. So
yes. And I was always, assertive, if not aggressive about it, about those opportunities and everything else. And I had to learn to really tone that down and be a little bit more patient and really focus on not making that the story. And that was really an important, opportunity for growth for me as a person is to be able to tone that down a little bit because it can be candidly off-putting. It can be a little bit presumptuous. And so I had to learn to kind of rein that in a way that really helped me express what I really wanted to express was that I love the work. I love the people I work with. I love the opportunity to help folks and tuning those things up rather than the aspect of I want that job.
Yeah. You weren't just looking for a title, right? Yeah. So you put on your resume. I'm curious, so if you go back, if you go back into 1999, what were you thinking about leadership then that now you're like, oh man, I didn't know what I didn't know? Like what have you discovered even in the last 6 years being in this chair at Plano that you're like, oh, I didn't see this coming? I mean, is there anything?
This is going to sound a little weird, but it's all about relationships. But when you're at the CEO level, it's a very isolating experience. You don't really, you have peers, but they're in other cities. And sometimes you might be in competition, but it's all about relationships. Things get done through relationships. Projects get focused on. Success happens through relationships, whether it's with our community, our city council, our partner agencies, our neighboring cities, our staff. Relationships are just critically important. We're in the people business and we're a service industry. So those relationships and how you manage those really, I can't stress it enough. That's how things get done. And so it's so important. And then, being the CEO, while you have all those relationships, tough decisions and tough times require leadership. And at times it's really just going to be you. And you have to be comfortable with that aspect of being that person and being in that role and accepting the responsibility of leadership.
Well, and I think, the accepting the responsibility part of also things that you've had to say we are doing this. Like in my role, I have to say we're gonna, whether it's salaries or jobs, various things.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't always think about that place you play though in the middle, because you work with the city council who are not employees of anything, right? They're elected officials, and they're setting a lot of the future. I guess their ideas and voting on things that then you have to, whether you agree with them or not, at any given moment throughout history, you have to then go to your team and say, "Hey, this is the will of the people says this." How that's got to be hard. I mean, I would think at times, right?
Actually, I find it very comfortable because they're the mayor's the chair of the board. They're our board of directors. They're the ones that set the policy and the strategy, and they say this is what it is. And every second and fourth Monday they get together and decide that. And I always say on Tuesday we go to work. And I always say that the staff responsibility is to make sure that our council is fully informed, that we've done our job of providing fair and complete information as much as we possibly can, that we don't put our thumbs on the scale. We allow them to truly consider the information that they need to cast their vote. And then once they cast their vote, it's our job to own that as if it was our own idea and to carry it to fruition with our best professional attitude that we possibly can. And I believe fully in that. I think that's professional management at its best.
Yeah.
And for me, I accepted that, coming into this role. And it's partly, when I mentioned the mentoring of Muhlenbeck and Bruce, they set a great example of that. But I also think that this community has great leadership, and part of that process of having representative government and representative leadership and how that works. I've known that was my role from grad school. And so the acceptance of that makes it a lot easier. Now, do they take every recommendation I have? Absolutely not. And do they have their own preferences for how things go? Absolutely. That frequently happens. But I view it also as a team. And I know that I'm not an elected official. Candidly, I have great respect for the amount of time and effort that they put in. But I respect that they're making the best decision at that time that they think possible. And so part of my job is to own that and to then accept it and deliver the best results possible. And that's what I try to do. I'm by no means perfect, but it's what I try to do.
When you said, we got to make it all happen, best means possible. A lot of people realize the city government, like a corporation, has a lot of layers to it, right? I mean, managers, directors, supervisors. Where have you found in leadership is the biggest breakdown? Because there's a breakdown in communication across the world. I mean, with social media and just everything else. Where have you found that? Where have you identified it? Where have you think you've had breakthrough in that, in communicating it from that office to the hundreds and then the thousands of citizens that y'all serve? Like, where's that breakdown?
So it's hard because everybody has their own preferences. So I find that personal touches still matter a lot. So it is hearing that message directly from the CEO for our staff members. It's me recording a video saying, "Hey, appreciate y'all, and this is great. We did a great job here. We just had an executive team meeting where we had all of our directors present some of their budgets. I mean, Jay, was the best meeting I can ever remember us having from executive team. And that was the feedback I gave them on the spot was, folks, this was the best meeting we've had that I can remember. And so most productive, the most engaged, it was just great. And that sort of feedback still being kind of personal, I think still matters. And then in the community, it's being out in the community. It is being open and willing to engage with folks. Because a lot of folks don't know what a city manager does. They look at me and they're like, "What is that?" I approach it that we're making relationships one person at a time, but we have to recognize that with social media and with all the different ways to convey information, it's our job as the professionals to present it in enough different ways that we can connect with our community. But the biggest thing, Jay, is we also have to listen, and it's taking time to have forums and opportunities to really listen to the impacts that we're having on our community, to the needs and wants of our communities, to concerns that they may have, all those things are critically important. And so it's having opportunities for that is something we work on pretty frequently.
Yeah, and that whole listening deal, it's I think because you're a city, the demand to listen is exponentially more important than the corporate world. Like, a lot of people, they listen so they know what their customers want in a sense, right? I mean, they can do studies, but really y'all have to be experts at the listening part, right? Because you're serving needs that are very personal, very intimate, financial, their welfare, their kids' education. I mean, there's just so much that y'all touch. I'm curious though, so that's at the public, but like when you have difficult, issues you have to, put forth, like I'll think of a small one, maybe not small to some, but y'all done return to work, right? So COVID or working virtual, and then you came back. Even that, like, how do you as a CEO role, how do you go from, okay, either the council wants us to do that or you decide and the executive team decides it's important. What does that look like, that process of saying, now we got to tell these people working in their living rooms, you got to come back? Because I know that created some tension.
Sure.
What does that look like internally for y'all?
So internally, it's really a matter of making sure that the entire organization understands the why. And it's important that it kind of gets down to the staff level. It's really, really important. And I find that, for me, it's the idea of, hey, we're thinking about making this change. And I intentionally mentioned that to my executive team in order to solicit feedback of, to allow folks to really process and have a little bit of time to say, to vet this with their staff members, to come up with issues, come up with proposals and everything else. And so spent a lot of time after kind of floating that idea, really, again, listening to the organization of, how much resistance is there? Does this actually break something? Does this actually create a huge staffing situation that we have, a lot of people leave, whatever it may be? But I found that the big thing is telling folks why and just being upfront about the why, and whether or not they truly agree, they have an answer. And so I think there's a false premise for leadership that you're going to have unanimity on ideas, and that's one of the things I learned very early on is anytime we make a decision as a city, or I make a decision as the city manager, getting second guessed goes with the job. It's not always the decision, but it's how the decision's implemented and other things. And that's just part of the nature of things of, oh, we should have done this, or, oh, it was obvious we should have gone that direction. But I always say that if you do the best that you can with the information that you have, and you are ethical and honest about the way you approach things, most employees can see it. And then, for me, after you've taken the time to really listen and solicit feedback, then you've got to make your decision. Are you moving forward or not? And for us, it was, we were moving forward. And then you allow a little bit of time for kind of that, what I would call kind of the fallout. But then you've got to move on. And it's important that the organization understand that it's time to move on. And that's an important leadership aspect too, is knowing how much is enough to allow people to truly express themselves and to hear it and consider it and weigh it all out. But then when it starts becoming something that might be counterproductive, you've got to be able to move the organization into a productive posture.
Yeah, and you can do that with those difficult topics if you've invested into them relationally on these other areas, which you have done well. So when you have to bring to them something that's like, oh, it's about salaries, it's about return to work, it's about shifting in departments or something. It's a little bit easier to do that. So the one thing I've noticed, if I just started looking at trends of the city of Plano, and really since you got there, I'm not saying it's because of you, but in the 2000s, from 2000 to 2026, we've grown from a couple of 100,000 to well over 300,000. So there's been shifts. Is that what those numbers ballpark?
We're right at 300,000 now. Yeah,
right, 300. And so there's been growth. But what a lot of people don't know who may be listening is that the Plano's boxed in. So while y'all have a ton of acreage, one of the larger land, like for a size of land you have, you're built out heavily. And now you're shifting to two things that I've noticed. You're having to go up more. You're having to either tear down some buildings, which are about a big one coming down, I guess, this month, tear down and go up. So you have to be really strategic. And it seems like the economic development part of your job, just from the outside looking in, it seems like that must be increasing more and more. Like the demand on you to help drive economic development. I know y'all went overseas, the team, and all that stuff. So what has that been like in your role over the last number of years? Is that seems to be really growing in a different way?
Well, what I would say is Plano was one of the fastest growing cities in the country in the late 70s, 80s, 90s, and even early 2000s. We were fast growth. But all of that infrastructure is kind of coming due at the same time. And so we are 72 square miles. We will never be anything bigger. We don't have an ETJ. We don't have any annexation plans or anything like that. We're 72 square miles. And so with that booming growth, we kind of went through the phase of housing and then corporate and retail and everything else. And when we talk about where we are now, we're more in the maintenance and redevelopment side of things. So now we know kind of what Plano is going to look like. And it's really this aspect of, okay, what are the opportunities for continued economic growth and continued investment in Plano and continued economic development, as you mentioned. The suburban piece of that thing is solid and is going to continue to be there. There is no doubt we are still a suburban community, but along our highways, we have some commercial corridors that are very noteworthy, including, the Legacy Business Park, Granite Park, and our research and technology corridor over here near City Hall. But what we've found is there is still a lot of interest because of the workforce that chooses to call Plano home. Plano still attracts a lot of families that have very professional degrees. The school system is fantastic, so people want to move here for sending their kids to school. We have great amenities with parks and restaurants. But what's happened is, over the course of the last 20 or so years, the amount of greenfield developable land has really declined. As you kind of mentioned, we've reached that build out phase. So we had to kind of take a look at this a little bit differently. And it really, I will give a ton of credit to my newest deputy, Doug McDonald, who we brought on as an economic development director. But it was also the city council at the time that said, hey, we need different options. We need to look at things differently. How do we stay competitive? And it gave us an opportunity to really go and be creative of saying, what are the tools that we've had and what new tools or what different tools can we bring to the table? Because Plano had an amazingly successful, economic development program under Sally Bain and under Tom Muhlenbeck and Bruce Glasscock. We were renowned throughout the country for those folks and what they were able to bring to Plano. And what we found was, post COVID, things were in a very different world, that the entire landscape shifted on us. And so what we had to start focusing on was the kind of to what you mentioned was, if we don't have greenfield development, then we're kind of talking about redevelopment or infill development or doing it a little different. And that's a different set of tools. That's a different mindset. That's a different scenario. And as you mentioned, we have a large corporate relocation that's getting going here in Plano that was announced this year. And for us, that's very, very important. And we're very excited about it. But it brings a different set of variables that we have to work with and work through. But we have started doing this in a way, Jay, that there's not a whole lot of cities in the country that I would say are doing it at the pace and at the level that Plano's doing it.
You say the level, I think, is one of it. When you say pace, you just mean you're attracting businesses right now at a pretty rapid rate. Like is it almost like this momentum starts building?
Right.
It comes in and that one they were talking about is AT&T, right? Is that public? That's public.
Yeah, it's public.
AT&T. I drove by. My wife and I stayed at one of the hotels nearby there, that Hyatt Regency. It's right down the street. Mm-hmm. And I said, I think that building is around here. And all of a sudden we just drove by it. It's all blocked off. Have they started imploding that or?
They're starting construction on it sometime this week.
Okay. That's a huge project. I would guess, we can talk about pace. When the word gets out, you've got to have companies just saying, okay, well, what do you got for us? Like, what else is there, right? Because they want to be around a big expansion.
Well, it sends a message about your, like I said, creativity and ability to do projects, and that's what, if you're looking at corporations and developers, that's what they want to know is, can they get their project done?
Yeah.
And we have an amazing team for that. I mean, I mentioned Doug McDonald. We just brought on Michael Talley, who we pulled over from the McKinney Economic Development Corporation. We have Peter Braster on our team, who's absolutely amazing at delivering projects on time. Those folks, they're the best at what they do, and to get that word out that, hey, projects don't have to necessarily go past Plano; they can be right here, and we can be successful delivering them, is a really important feature. But it does create that momentum that you talked about. So it's corporate relocations of the magnitude that we're talking about are huge. And they do have a cascading effect. But if anything else, it really helps your reputation also on, like I said, delivering projects.
Oh yeah. Well, and then their reputation goes way beyond the Dallas Fort Worth Metroplex. It goes to the state and it goes globally. So I'd love for you to just comment on, and I don't know how often y'all have done this, where y'all just spend a couple weeks in Asia, talking to people. What is that? What are those conversations like as you, as a leader, you walk into those settings? What does that look like in trying to lead that international trip, dealing with international partners, which you already have a number of them?
Right.
What is that, or what does that challenge you as a leader, I guess is what the question would be.
Well, it's, first of all, when I'm there, if I'm with the mayor, trust me when I say that the mayor is the star of the show.
Okay.
Always, always.
Yeah.
But no, we took a trip to Taiwan, Korea, and then Japan. And I think for me as a leader, one of the things that we look for is parallels or similarities in values, in how to do business. And there's a lot of aspects of business in Asia that still are important to recognize the element of face to face and really building relationships, long-term decisions, a lot of consideration before decisions are made. And, showing that you're wanting to understand the culture, the business, the values of the home base of the company is critically important, And so spending time to do everything that you can to learn about their history, the food, the transportation, whatever it might be, are just very important. And those companies, when I say that they appreciate it, it's you're taking an interest not just in what they're producing, but who they are. And so for us, that's a big part of it. So, we take classes on etiquette, on, the card exchange, on basic phrases, on things like that, to really be able to, show respect to the companies that have either chosen to call Plano home, might be considering Plano, or, just one that we're building relationships with. And so for us, that really allows us to continue to grow our reputation and to grow our ability to attract corporations that may be looking to invest in the United States.
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong, there are a number of companies that are based in one of the Asian countries that have come into the Plano area, and you're actually, do y'all just do a partnership with a big hotel out of Japan?
So yes, Miyako Hybrid Hotel. So Miyako's one of the brands that is part of the Kintetsu Corporation. And, that's one of the things that we learned going over is these are, multi-billion-dollar conglomerates that are just ginormous. Kintetsu owns shopping malls. They own part of the rail system in Japan. They actually manufacture rail cars, and some of the dark light rail that are here are actually manufactured by Kintetsu. And then they have hotels and things like that as well. So they're huge. And so we get a hotel and we're like, yes, we've got this. And then we realize when we visit how big they are and how important that relationship is. But to have a full service Japanese hotel here in North Texas, in close walking proximity to Toyota and NTT Data, it really will help, from a cultural perspective, people that are visiting from abroad feel at home.
Well, and I would assume those of us here will enjoy it as well, obviously.
Absolutely.
The
My
uniqueness
wife
of it.
can't wait. She cannot wait to go to the restaurant there and everything else. And it's I've stayed at a Miyako product, and it's amazing. It's beautiful, it's clean, and it's nice, but it's going to be a true Japanese experience.
But can I walk from there to Tommy Bahama's and get their food? That's
You can.
I was wondering about that.
It is. It's going to be close, and it's going to have the first rooftop bar over in that legacy area. So it's going to be beautiful.
That's gonna be cool. You were talking about customs, things y'all learned, changing cards. We joked about this, how when you get on the elevator, right, the most important people are at the front by the door, and someone else says no, in the back. They're in the back, up against the back, and then someone pushes the button. So,
Yes.
Was there a bit of a did you know exactly who was in the back and who was in the front?
Absolutely. Mayor is first, and he's in the back left. He's always in his spot. I'm back right, and then we kind of filter in from staff from there. But it is always this aspect of protection of the highest ranking person there, which is always the mayor. And so for us, that's very strict protocol. But it's everything from the greeting to the salutations to where you sit, and it's again one of the most respectful cultures that I've ever run across, and it's something that I've grown more and more fond of spending time there, and having their business meetings. They're so organized. They're so well timed and just really, really productive. And so for me, it's every time I come back, I meet with our staff and I'm like, we have got to do our meetings better. They're so much better at it than we are. We need to do our meetings better.
They did. There's a stand-up comic named Jim Gaffigan that he went over did tours in Japan, and he came back saying similar things. Like, man, they're just crushing us on this and this, like the way they do things. And so it's important. By the way, we don't know if Mavis is going to listen to this or not, but I'll have to remind him. I did ask him when he told me the story about the elevator.
Yes.
I looked at him and he goes, yes, I was the one that was punching the buttons.
Well, he and his wife, who is just a wonderful, sweet lady. They literally took care of us in making sure that if there was anything that needed to be done, that it wasn't just him, it was his wife as well, stepped up and made sure we were handled. But he's been a great addition to our team, and just happy to have had that experience with him on board.
Yeah. And so he's from Estonia.
He is.
But it's here. And just, which to me, I wanted to ask about that because one of the things I've noticed working with so many of your folks, and I comment on this a lot, it's one of the most internationally diverse, ethically diverse clients I have. And just seeing the city, it's grown its diversity a lot. And your base of employees has as well. It's wonderful. But it also can present challenges, right? As a city changes in all areas of diversity. When you look ahead and as the city changes and grows, maybe not just that, but just challenges in general as leading the city forward. Where are the big challenges for you? Like where you're thinking, man, I've got to get better at this. I got to lean into this. What are the challenges you're looking at ahead?
Well, personally, I've got a bunch of I've got a lot of improving to do, but I think as an organization, we have a lot of tenured folks that have been like me with the city for over 25 years. And, candidly, those folks, at some point, they're going to go to the beach and they're going to say, I like this better than what I'm doing the rest of the time. And they're going to do that. And so it's finding and making sure that we're working on succession planning and that we're growing our staff and growing our team so that we have a deep bench to continue on with the reputation and the values that the city has. And so it's finding folks like a Melis, Anton, to take a job here with us, work with us, really get to know the organization and the values, and then find ways to grow them. But we have a lot of staff like that, and we're very lucky to have a great team. They're, I constantly tease that for a baseball reference, I have murderers row for an executive team. There's no weaknesses in there. And so they are all strong. They are all professional, creative, good, experienced. It's just an amazing group. But when we start losing folks to retirements and things like that, we're going to have big shoes to fill. And so that's something I've spent some time and spent some effort kind of rededicating ourselves to succession planning over the last couple of years. So restarting MP3 and doing some of the things that you're doing with your cohorts and leadership for the 21st century. Some of those programs that we have are designed to help grow folks to give them the opportunities that I had. And so I think that's part of my responsibility is to pay forward what I've been, generously given over the course of my career. Because as I say, Jay, I didn't build this. I inherited wealth. And so it's my job to make sure I contribute to it and make it, available and in great shape for the next person that's going to come along and lead.
I don't know which is harder, taking something that's great and make sure you don't screw it up, or make it make it something, because there is a sense of you feel that though. You're like, I walked into this really great situation.
Yeah.
And now I want to keep driving that excellence. And y'all talk about being a city of excellence. And I think one of the things I've heard people say is like, we don't want to turn that into a bumper sticker where we sort of say it. Like, no, because every generation has to go, what is excellence? Like what in the context of the years we're in, or the makeup of the city and all that, what does it mean to be a city of excellence? And one thing y'all done, this relates to me personally, but I am impressed with the amount of attention y'all do place on development of your staff that a lot of companies, I would say companies similar size, don't do. And it, in the whole scheme of things, it's a very small percentage dollar wise of the whole deal, but it creates exponential results, right? Of just, I think about when I met Abby, she was probably a manager. And then she became director. No, she was probably a supervisor, maybe when I first met her. And to watch people like her and others kind of ascend to those positions, y'all are really doing something right. And there's a number of stories like that of people who've kind of worked through like you did. So that's really, it's really cool as we do that. When you think about just kind of leadership in general, one thing that someone asked me, or I asked somebody years ago, I said, I'll tell you what they said after you answer, but I said, what is that thing that you have to do now that you had no idea you were going to have to do 20 or 30 years ago? Like what is that character trait, that behavior that you're like, oh gosh, it's like, no one ever told me I would have to develop this. Is there anything that's almost been surprising to you? And I can tell you in a second what that guy said, but is there anything that's like, oh man, I wasn't expecting that. I got to act like this or do this.
Two things. One is you have to have a game face. And so when I'm sitting at the dais and I'm, interacting with counsel and things like that, I'm usually pretty stoic in my expressions.
Okay.
And it's just listening and absorbing everything in, but learning to have a game face where you're not immediately reacting or turning red-faced or whatever it might be to whatever situation. That aspect, it can be going on internally, but you can't express that externally because it can become a distraction, and you've got to learn to manage those things. And then the second thing that I would say is, I use this analogy a lot of the answer is 4. I don't need to, so long as the math works, you can use simple math, algebra, calculus. I don't care. How you do it is more on your end, but I need the answer to be 4. So I've got to learn to let go of kind of controlling the organization. It's my job to set expectations, but it's up to the team to actually do the aspect. I've never cut a blade of grass, Jay. And it gets done every single week to a high level. So I've had to learn that you give the expectation for how people do things and then get out of the way. And I've learned that if you're going to truly trust your folks, the highest way that I can show you that I trust you is to say the expectations, tell you where we need to go, and then truly get out of the way and let you do your job, and understand that you're going to get there.
That's still good. And by the way, any of us have been around you and all your folks, you do have a game face. I don't know what your non-game face looks like, that I know you personally over the years, But you've probably had to develop that more and more over time, which is good. And just to affirm you in that, I have watched leaders, and people who are leaders need to hear this. I've watched leaders walk in and they feel like wherever they go, if they're at the highest level, like if they're the highest leader, they need to do something, like they need to be the one to do it. And I've watched you navigating a couple of places where someone else might flex to go, well, city manager's in the room. And you don't do that. You'll take a seat, you'll step back, and you're letting whoever is in charge of that do it really well. And so that's a tough thing to do sometimes, right? I mean, because there's that impulse to lead. Let me ask you this. I'll tell you what the guy said. I said, what have you found to be true? And he just said it in one sentence and he explained. He goes, I have to talk less. And I said, what do you mean? He said, Jay, he had an organization, a couple of thousand people, and by extension, probably more than that. And he said, we were small, he goes, I could clean up all my words. I could grab everybody together and say, oh, I mean that, or, a couple of layers, But he said, now every word I say, it's not so much that's always less, but it's so much more precise, because there's this, Patrick Lencioni talks about if employees see a crack of daylight kind of between what you say and someone else says, or what you said and you wrote, and what you said yesterday as opposed to today, man, it's that gap gets even bigger. Have you found that to be true? Just 100%. Precision? Yeah.
No, it's two things. I would say number one is it's more scrutinized. Your words, direction, and everything else, people are looking for, what that means. And is this consistent with, previous comments or direction or policy or whatever it else is. But I would also say that talking less is also kind of an interesting aspect, because when you walk into a room, when I was 2 or 3 levels down, when I was the assistant city manager, man, our staff would say all sorts of things in front of me. When I walk in a room now, the conversation changes, and you have to accept that you're in a role of leadership, and they're gonna say some things, but they won't say others. It won't come directly to you. It'll come through another staff member or whatever it might be. But you change conversations merely by your presence, and that drives me a little nuts, because these are folks that have known me my whole career, and they're my family in many ways, and they know that. But it's not Mark, it's the job.
Yes. It comes with the weight of the title.
Yeah.
I was leading a group one time, and I said something about where we're going to lunch. And I just off the cuff said, it's like saying I like, Chick-fil-A, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember no one else commented. I said, so guys, where are we going? And they all looked at me and they said, well, we're going to Chick-fil-A.
Yeah.
Or whatever. I was like, well, I just said I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not how this works.
Yeah.
So you do lose some of that kind of freedom along the way in that. So when knowing that some of your people will listen to this, without using a lot of words, right? If you could just have a takeaway statement that you said, this is what I want people to know about leading a team, leading an organization. So these could be people within the city, outside the city, obviously. Well, if you could write a book, like what would be your topic? What would you talk about?
I would talk about my people, and I would give examples of how great they really are, how much they care, how professional they are. I mean, I work next door to LaShawn Ross. I mean, for those that don't know LaShawn Ross, she is one of the most dynamic, professional, intelligent, caring people that on the planet. I put her up against just about anybody. I get to work with her every single day and watch her look. I get to watch, folks like Doug McDonald and Shelley Seymour and Becky Rubenstein and Jack Carr and Paige Mims and all these folks. They're just amazing. And I would love to tell their stories more about the little things that folks don't see that make the difference, that show how professional they are and how much they care, and how they care about each other in the community and the organization, and how selfless they are, and how much pride they take in doing government work and being really, really good at it. And I get to witness that on a daily basis. And so those folks, They inspire me. They make me want to be better tomorrow than I was today. They remind me constantly of the good folks that are actually out there in government that are trying to make differences in their community. And I just couldn't be more proud to be a member of the team.
That's so good. And I want to thank you because I don't get to interact with them as much, those people you name. But the good news is you got a lot of people that LaShawn has influenced and all those others. And you got at every level, you've got these just great people doing good things. And I want to say that as someone who comes primarily out of the private sector, never worked in the public sector. I mean, I tried to get elected, but that's struggled. So I did my best, but I tried to get there. But no, I just think it's great to see that level of excellence at all levels in what we're doing. So thank you for the visit today, and look forward to sharing it with folks, and just appreciate all you do. And thank you for allowing me to be a part of some little part of that. I'll be there tomorrow, by the way.
Great.
Training Room A. So if you're out and about, come by and say hello.
I will.
Class, or I think I'm kicking off my first L21 for the year.
Oh, nice. Good deal.
We're doing the DISC behavioral assessment,
Yeah.
talking about comparing it to your leadership style. So that should be great.
Awesome. Well, Jay, thank you for the opportunity. A great conversation, and just to appreciate your contribution to Plano. And I mean it. There's, I consistently hear such strong reviews of not just what you're teaching, but your style and your personal ability to kind of connect with folks here in the organization. It really does make an impact, and you're part of the team. So we appreciate you.
Well, thank you for that. And y'all have a good summer, good wrap up to May, and a good summer.
All right. Take care.
Yeah, bye.
Thanks.
Your Playbook is powered by Sandler, a global provider of sales and leadership methodology backed by data-driven solutions designed for measurable, continued success. Check out Sandler.com. And a big shout out to Rogue Media Network.
This has been a Rogue Media Network production.